kudos to BioUtah for including this important topic. And what I want to talk to you about today is women's health not being a niche. Many people have said to me it's a niche. And I want to talk to you about how it's also a great business opportunity. So, a bit of a roadmap. We'll start with some terminology and definitions because it's good to have everyone saying the same thing. I'll talk a little bit about the history, and then I'll talk about what's changing. It's an extremely interesting and vibrant time in women's health right now. Lots of change. You heard the FDA talk about what they're doing with clinical trials and women, and and then I want to talk to you about the business opportunity, because that, I think, is what's going to change women's health the most. So why am I excited? Well, for me, it's everything. It was historically extremely underinvested, and now there is a pent-up demand, which in itself presents a great opportunity. It's 51% of the population, as you all know, but also it's many, many different diseases and modalities. And there's a great opportunity, a financial opportunity here that's not widely known. So let's just get some definitions out of the way. Sex versus gender. So sex is biologically determined, and gender is a social construct. So they're not interchangeable. And what exactly is women's health? So traditionally, it has been women's reproductive organs and reproduction. But it's a much bigger universe because women and men are different in many different ways. So in cardiac disease, Alzheimer's and diabetes, and in COVID, the symptoms, the presentation, sometimes the response to drugs, the incidence is kind of different. And then the differentially impacting women is Alzheimer's, 2 to 1 women in Alzheimer's. Depression is also predominantly in women. Autoimmune is somewhere between 6 times to 8 times more prevalent in women. Migraine, obesity. So it's just not reproductive organs only, as has been thought traditionally. So when I just mentioned obesity, I'm bringing it up because everyone's talking about GLP-1s. And it's I think, very important that a sort of public health type of innovation has come to the fore, because I think pharma has been very focused on rare diseases and more esoteric areas, but obesity, which is called a pandemic here in the US, is now at the fore, and it is seen as a very much affecting women for various reasons. And then Alzheimer's disease is also coming to the fore, underlining the fact that you have to look at these different sexes. I want to talk about femtech very briefly, because people sometimes call women's health femtech. I don't really mind what people call something. I just want to make sure that people are saying the same thing. So femtech was coined by Ida Tin in 2016. She was the founder of Clue, which is the first online menstruation app. And what she meant was the merging of digital platforms and tech. So the way I use it is for digitally enabled health, women's health. So what are some of the reasons for this gap? This is work done by McKinsey. There remains a very big gap between in the understanding between the differences between men and women biologically, also from a societal point of view. There is constrained access to care in women. Again, you might be able to imagine why. The data gap is a real problem. And then underlying all of this has been a historically very, very low investment. So I have 3 slides here about why women's health is relative to where it should be in the dark ages. So some repetition, again, under-researched, There was also the idea that females were too complicated because of menstruation, pregnancy, and this was very important in choosing animal models. So only male animals were used because they complicated the data. But you're going to give these medicines to women who are complicated, so it doesn't make sense to omit the women in the animal models. Regulation, it was not mandated to have women in clinical trials till 1993. And then the analysis of males and females and having studies being powered to enable that analysis is still not mainstream. The NIH budget for women's health was very constrained. WAM is a nonprofit. I'll have it in the sources at the end. They've done some great work showing the disparity. And interestingly, all studies that did a phase 1 were called first in man, even if they were for ovarian cancer or uterine fibroids. So it's sort of imbued in even our vocabulary. This is changing now. Now we have first in women, but very recently. I don't mean this in a bad way, but I think our society is still a patriarchy where men are seen as the default. And women were considered small men, maybe inferior. It's interesting that many of the OBGYN instruments, to me, look like instruments of torture. And the tenaculum was used, I believe, in the Civil War to remove bullets from the arms of soldiers or legs of soldiers, and it still looks pretty similar. And then the word hysteria and hysterical comes from the Greek word for the uterus. So there was a lot of not listening to women or dismissing them. It's All in Her Head by Elizabeth Coleman is a great book. It's actually quite engaging and funny, and it gives a good background into this history. And lastly, this idea of women's health being a niche, I really want to dispel that. If you take away nothing else, please appreciate that this is not a niche. Many pharmas divested themselves of the women's health portfolio. As you know, Merck spun out Organon. And the irony is that I think pharmas became a niche player rather than women's health being a niche player. I think that was part of pharma's shift away from common chronic diseases, but maybe with the GLP-1 enthusiasm, we'll go back to the more common chronic diseases. And also, there are exceptions in women's health. Cancer, women's cancers have had more attention than other areas. So what are some of the consequences? And there are many. This is just some. There's often a misdiagnosis, and women will tell you that they haven't been listened to and heard. This is a constant theme. Dangerous delays in treatment, so on endometriosis, which affects 1 in 10 women of reproductive age, so it's pretty prevalent. And it takes up to 6 to 8 years to be diagnosed. And then this unsuitable treatment, so I'm not going to pronounce it properly, but Leqembi, which was the Biogen Eisai drug, it was shown to have almost no effect in women and a very low effect in men, but it really only works, if at all, in men. It's been taken off the market, but it looks like it may come back again. And hold this thought on on unsuitable treatment for just a minute. The next slide, I just wanted to talk to you about the differences or the gap in diagnosis. So 100% of women, or close to 100%, undergo menopause, but 80% of women are not diagnosed or treated or helped with menopause. If you look at erectile dysfunction, it's the opposite, right? So it's not every man has ED, and of the people who do, the diagnosis is quick. Same way for endometriosis. Interesting, I also put in BPH, that was a benign prostatic hypertrophy. That was a surprise to me, that 2 in 10 women are not diagnosed, same as PCOS with polycystic ovarian syndrome. I wanted to show you I was not being totally biased, trying to get some parity here. Now I want to go back to some of the consequences that are already costly to pharma from not studying women separately. 8 drugs have been retracted from the market due to greater risks in women. And each drug is estimated to have cost pharma and taxpayers $1.6 million. The references are there. And this again talks about the drug withdrawals. And so I think this is something that's underappreciated, and there are actual costs to pharma and society already. So now let's I've given you all the baggage of the past. Let's look at the future. Things are changing, and so therefore we are at a pivot point, and it's very, very interesting. So most people, or most women I should say, and men, when I tell them this, they say, oh no, they say, no, can't be true. Then when I give them facts, they say, no, that's amazing, it's outrageous. And now there's a lot of action. So this is the good part. So women, as you know, are more educated and aware and wealthy. Society is, I hope, increasingly valuing women. And then employers have become quite a boon to women's health, because the big employers want to attract and retain female talent, and they're providing benefits, women's health benefits, to keep their women employees happy. So that has been an interesting new player. And then most interestingly has been the proliferation of women entrepreneurs. And many women entrepreneurs hew to women's health because they understand the problems. Digital health capabilities have really encouraged and spurred women's health, because the barriers to entry are low, unlike starting a lab to develop having access to a lab to develop a therapeutic. So the internet, I don't know what AI's impact might be, but I'm optimistic about digital twins and other ways to clean up the data and to boost the data gap. And the government policy, I'll talk about a little bit again, has been very interesting and important. And then there's venture. There are increasingly venture investment in innovation in women's health. So in the government, you might be aware that the Biden initiative is slated up to $12 billion, and this was done in November 2023. All bets are off. We don't know where that'll go in the future, but we hope that some of it will be retained. Likewise, the DoD committed $500 million to women's health, and then ARPA-H had a sprint for women's health, and the awards were just announced in October. And it's just to talk about some areas. One awardee was looking at women's pain. This is a real problem because women's pain has not been taken seriously, and it's complicated because pain can be subjective, and this group is looking at eye movements as a way to somewhat more objectively track pain. There was also funding for ovarian aging and also for non-invasive tests for endometriosis. There were many other awards. And then very recently, Melinda Gates announced $250 million for nonprofit funding towards women's health. And if you would like to know more about governmental and non-dilutive funding, Liz Powell is here, and she's the maven of this repository of this knowledge, and she'll be able to tell you much more than I can. So what is the opportunity in women's health? Let's go to McKinsey, and you don't have to believe me. McKinsey, Jenna Benefield is presenting in this room, I believe, at 1:15 p.m. This afternoon to present the McKinsey report that looks at a $1 trillion market opportunity, I believe, by 2040. So that is not to be scoffed at. So when we come back to the real world, and we are today talking about drug development, developing devices, diagnostics, the entire value chain or the ecosystem in women's health is either rutted, broken, or was never established. So as you know, you go from research to translation to patent, entrepreneur, VC funding, and exit, and then to commercialization. Okay, I'm simplifying it. All I want to say is that the reason that I am a VC funding women's health at early stages is because I see that as a very important juxtaposition in the middle of this value chain. And in order to boost this system. But in reality, we need everybody here to work on it: regulators, doctors, payers, pharma, healthcare industry, policymakers, et cetera. And again, I was very pleased to hear the FDA's comments, and I think the FDA is increasingly aware of women's health and some of the deficits and the problems. So, very quickly about me. I'm a co-founder of Kidron Capital. We are embracing what's called the blue ocean opportunity, a very attractive yet untapped opportunity to invest in. And we are open to getting pushback and presenting you with data to talk to you about why we think we're so bullish about this opportunity. We also want entrepreneurs to please talk to us. So please come and talk to me afterwards if you have some great ideas. So the venture investment in women's health as a category is really less than 7 years old in a meaningful way, in the newer definition of women's health. VC really, and many industries, look to the past to predict the future. And when you have a new industry, that's very hard to do because there isn't a whole lot of data talking about the past. So therefore, I think that one has to take a different view as you look at women's health. And I also liken it to climate change, which didn't exist as a robust industry, climate tech, rather than climate change. And it is now a robust industry. So I think one has to have an open mind, and that's what I'm asking of you as well. So currently, the VC investment is primarily in the pregnancy. Oncology is always attractive, and fertility. But it is changing over time to other areas. One of the problems with the other areas is that there's less science supporting it. And then just look at the left-hand side of this. This is from McKinsey. Again, Jenna will present much more of her data. But 47% of the health burden stems from conditions that affect women disproportionately. So, actually, the reproductive part is a small part if you look at the whole economics of the women's health burden. And we really need to focus on that. We need science, entrepreneurs, policy to look at all those other opportunities. And again, I'm repeating this, I'll just skip over it. Reproductive health is just the tip of the iceberg, and there's a whole lot more that we have to look at. The other thing about women is that women have several life stages as they age, and so the menopause has become a very interesting area for investment right now. It was, 5 years ago, it was barely acknowledged. It was a taboo. A lot of women's health conditions have been taboo and have not been spoken about, and then if you don't speak about them, then it obviously stymies research and intervention. But there are, again, this is some of the notable companies that have and areas. And then here, this is the most important slide. So things may change after the election, but it hasn't been a good time for most of healthcare. And the bottom red graph is what has been happening and in life sciences. But women's health has been going up. So there is, despite the overall doldrums, if you will, in the healthcare market, women's health has been increasing. So that's, to me, evidence for really unstoppable momentum, and we're getting there, and we need everyone to work hard to turn the tide. Here are some investors in women's health. On the left-hand side are funds that focus only on women's health, and they define women's health differently and have different criteria. On the right-hand side, which is, I think, what's really interesting, are large funds that are generalist funds, but who are making investments in women's health. For the most part, they rely on the left-hand side to make the early investments and then come in later. So it's all a part of the ecosystem. And the bottom funds are the last three funds on the bottom are European funds. The others are primarily US funds. So if you ask which fund has invested the most in women's health, I think you'll be surprised. So RH Capital, it's a women's health fund, now rebranded as Foreground Capital. They had 20 deals as of 21. That's not a surprise. But GV, Google Ventures, has 21 deals in women's health, and they are taking it seriously, and they're quite smart. And then Lux Capital is another $1 billion fund, and they have 9 deals. So it's no longer a niche. It's becoming mainstream, and I want everyone to be aware of this change, which is very, very positive. And then I'm giving you some examples of investments in women's health across modalities. So if you look at drug development, there's Arsenal, Antiva, Comanche, and Freya. I believe there's a representative from Freya here today. I'm sorry, I think I left out a Y in the company's name. In medical devices, we are investors in Mayhealth that's addressing PCOS, and then there are some other examples. Healthcare services has been a robust area in women's health. Maven, a company providing maternity, fertility, and menopause, is now valued at $1.7 billion. Kindbody is fertility focused, MIDI is menopause focused. You can see GV as Google being investors in them. And then diagnostics, again, AOA, ovarian cancer diagnostics. Anna is here, and she will be presenting in the afternoon. So what about exits? This is what everybody asks about. Show me that there are exits. Now, with the caveat that in a new area, there are not going to be as many exits as a 50-year-old field or a 40-year-old field. But Forendo, an endometriosis therapeutic, was acquired for a goodly sum by Organon. Alydia postpartum hemorrhage device was acquired also by Organon. Natal in menopause was acquired by Maven. Genève was acquired by United Health, which is a OBGYN, I think it's GYN primarily, I believe, network, a large network of physicians. Immunogen for ovarian cancer, Progeny had an IPO, and Sera Prognostics, a Utah company, also had an IPO, and Envision for early diagnosis of ovarian cancer was acquired by Boston Scientific. These are just some examples to let you know that there is activity. And so here, my key takeaways are the momentum is unstoppable, it's happening. More generalist investors are coming in because we want to be mainstream. We are just like any other area, and we should not be separate. I also, on that note, want to add that men's health would improve by disaggregating the sexes, because where there are differences, you'd get a better signal by disaggregating them. The pipeline is maturing with later stage deals now. There are new business models like value-based contracting and consolidation of single point solutions in digital health. And many retailers are entering the fray. And there's more life science, and by that I mean more drug development and more science-driven areas that have been to date held back because of the lack of research funding. So the first wave, as I see it, in women's health was primarily digital health and consumer-facing. The second wave has become more medical devices and diagnostics, and then therapeutics are recently taking off, but it's going to be a long haul before they reach the market, as you know. So these are the resources. The McKinsey report, which you'll hear about. Silicon Valley Bank did a very good report. Deloitte, and then WHAM is looking at the FDA funding and the White House initiative. And I want to celebrate Utah and thank Kelvin and BioUtah. Utah is a hub for women's health. You might not have known that. Edwards did one of the first trials in women for the Tower device, a 5-year study. Great data. J3 is here. Laborie, Marabio, looking at antibodies in maternal blood that might predict autism. Metrodora Institute, Myriad was early to the genomic analysis of BRCA, Sera for preterm birth, and Utah Medical Products, and many, many more. So here these companies speak at 2 p.m. in the ballroom, and yay, Utah. Thank you very much.